everyone, it's Pam with Olive&Owl, and today during our maker feature videos, we have with us Michele with Lollie Michael's Studio. And so tell us about what you do.
I make t-shirt quilts. Most people think t-shirt quilts, graduation quilts, but it's so much more. Most of what I do is memorial work. When somebody passes away, I take all of their clothes and turn them into mostly quilts, but also pillows. So you take that quilt with grandmom's stuff and you're literally wrapped in love and that memory. Kids' clothes too, though.
That's so great. It's so special. So this is a funny one. How did we meet? We met through my mother-in-law.
Yes.
Deborah Heggie, who used to own the Little Shop, as a lot of people know. And you took a class there a while ago. Is that how you met her?
Debbie actually taught me to quilt in the first place. So I had a basic sewing knowledge because my mother and my grandmother sew, but they did garment work. Like my grandmom did alterations and she made the wedding dresses for my mom and my aunts. So I had some basic sewing knowledge.
Sure.
But I was having a baby and decided I needed to make a baby quilt and didn't know how to do that. And so Debbie taught me that 25 years ago.
Nice. So then in turn, I now know Michele because of my mother-in-law, and we've met a couple of times, and we can always really appreciate how funky our styles are, I think. Obviously the quilting background puts us in the same breed, but we can really appreciate, like, we do some out-of-the-box stuff.
Yes.
So I think that's kind of like our shared vein of fun. Michele, tell me about, you obviously work with your customers on a really personal level. What brings you joy with that? Like, what's one of the really powerful things you walk away and you're like, I love to do this because
I can see how much it means to the recipient. Admittedly, these are not your prettiest, traditionally pretty, beautiful quilts. Like the quilts you use on your furniture. These are not that. But when you see the reaction of the recipient and how they just look at every piece and it's like, I remember that. Or this, I just remember her wearing that thing. Or I see that and it's just, that was Dad. They love it. And that is incredible.
Yeah, that I can't even imagine being able to pass that on to a loved one, and knowing that they're just kind of shining down on you, and knowing that you helped with that whole process in such a great way.
Being a quilt that they can sitting there watching movies on a Friday night and you've just got that on you and you are literally wrapped in love.
It's such a special thing. So Michele, take us through, I know I've seen some of your work. It looks like you work really hard to interpolate what the client is really looking for. You don't just cut up t-shirts and sew them together. You really kind of interpret what they're looking for and give them almost an entirely different thing every time.
And it's true. Every single one of my projects is unique. While some of them may be similar, and I use previous work to inspire future work. When I have a meeting with a client, we look at a lot of pictures, and I want to see what their vision is. Do they appreciate modern style? Do they appreciate traditional style? What is their color palette? What is their size? What are the details in the garments that they're giving me that I can pull out? Sometimes it's, including the details of a pocket. Sometimes I've even done them where it was a plain colored sweatshirt and it had paint splatters on it.
Okay.
The paint splatters were the important part. The stain told the story because they painted their first apartment together. And so where, a lot of times you maybe want to try and avoid the part of the garment that's stained, that stain told the story.
Right.
And so those are the details that I talk about in the meetings.
Sure.
And include. And I also work with a lot of different fabric. I've even put bathing suits.
Wow.
Literally women's bathing suits, which are very difficult.
Doesn't get any stretchier than that.
Bathing suits to silk ties cardigans, which you typically cut into that, it's going to fray and make a mess.
Sure.
I have worked with all of those different fabrics into one quilt.
It's so cool, and I can definitely appreciate the level of skill that would take, because not everybody's willing to do that, because that takes a lot of extra care and detail to work with those different kind of textiles, and you do have to stabilize the t-shirts, and that's its own arena, but this is next level stuff. So I can really appreciate the level of detail working with that kind of those different materials. So Michele, this is gonna be a tough one, because I know it's always a tough one for me, but take us through maybe one of your favorite pieces or projects that you've worked in throughout the years.
One of my favorite pieces in this vein of memory quilts.
Sure.
As opposed to when I get to do my personal, my personal.
I know we
pretty
have to quantify it a little bit, but I understand.
One of my favorite pieces in the vein of memory quilts is actually one of the very first pieces I did.
Okay.
And so this is just over 20 years ago, when I was a novice quilter and had no business taking on this project.
Okay.
And it did not actually incorporate the different textiles and the fabrics, but it was a photo quilt.
Okay.
And it was to celebrate my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. And so there are 4 generations of photos on that quilt, and it's using a technique that I no longer use, because that quilt will meet its end someday. It was not.
Sure.
It was just iron-on transfer
Okay.
of the photos. But there are 4 generations on that quilt.
So a lot of photos.
Yeah, no, there's 4 generations, and I'm thinking there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 pictures.
Oh, wow.
As well as hand embroidery. I hand embroidered a saying across it.
Okay.
And even machine quilted it myself, because I couldn't find a long armor to do it in the time period, so I had to bite the bullet, and I did the quilting on it. And so that was for their 50th wedding anniversary, which is now 21 years ago, and my grandfather is no longer with us, but my grandmother still is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this was a monumentally huge project.
It was a very big, like I said, I had no business doing that work as such a novice quilter. But that one I still get to see.
Sure.
Because it hangs in her house.
Sure.
And so that one is kind of extra special, because it really pushed me. I learned so much doing it, and I still get to. I look at that one and see Oma and Opa's love. More so probably
special.
than if I, made the quilt out of their clothes. I see the pictures, and that is the memory quilt for me.
That's fantastic. That's really special. So Michele, we have a lot of pieces of furniture, and during our maker videos, we always ask which one is your favorite.
My favorite is a little chair named Evie, because even though she's not denim, clearly I like denim, and it feels like something I could live with.
The blue speaks
The blue,
to you.
Yes, it's my casual color palette.
Love it. So Michele, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us. I know I learned a lot about what you do. I mean, there's enough there's enough information on Facebook to get an idea, but talking about it and learning more about it is always more useful than just some pictures sometimes. So go ahead and tell us your plug for your name, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so my name's Michele, but you can find me on Facebook at Lollie, Lollie, Lollie Michaels Studio.
Bye! I was just telling her that we both jump in and out of our husband's business, and that's another thing that we share in common that not everybody does that.